What's up guys, it's Henny Design, and in this video I'm going to be doing another episode of 5 minutes versus 30 minutes versus 2 hours, but with a twist. Instead of 2 hours, we're going to be doing 10 hours and doing everything we can to improve this graphic and take as much time to put as much detail in as possible. These are the images I'm going to be working with for the first two, for the 5 minutes and 30 minutes, and then for the 10 hours I'll be adding assets but keeping the idea and the look of the graphic the same. With that being said, let's get into the 5 minutes. We're going to be starting our 5 minutes in 3, 2, 1, now. First thing we have to do is get this sky, and I want to bring it about right up here. I guess we'll use this image right here as the ground. Just grab our magic wand to cut it out. This could be a nice mountain here, I guess. I'll also give it a little bit of warp here. Cut it out right there. Boom, right there. Warp. I just like to have these curvatures in my mountains. Just gives it a bit more dynamic, I feel. Let's go ahead and get this tree stump in. This is going to be difficult to cut out, I can already tell. I guess we're going to have to make a rough one with the lasso. There we go. Let's tilt it. Now let's add in our tree stump that we had. Drag it down to about right there. And let's place our person right here. Let's drag them both down a bit more. We can start adding a little bit of color. Let's go ahead and grab this orange, saturate it, turn our flow down, and let's paint in some glows back here. Let's group all of our mountains together and see if we can hit some minute-long lighting. We're going to go ahead and turn down our saturation. Color balance. Below our color balance, let's add a curves. Let's try to add some highlights. Go ahead and paint on just like this. We're only going to be able to do some rim lighting here. I don't think I'm going to get onto the lighting with the player. Honestly, this 5 minutes is going by way better than I thought it was. We have about 1:20 left. Let's even add some haze in here. For our last thing, we're going to add some smoke, so we're just going to grab this brush. I'm going to turn it to purple. Click, and we're going to make it wrap around our person. Warp. Just keep it going. For 5 minutes, I don't think this is bad at all. Hopefully you guys can see the vision and what I'm sort of going for here. With that being said, let's get into the 30-minute design. For our 30 minutes, we're just going to continue our 5-minute design, just basically clean everything up and do everything a little bit better, just so we don't have to cut things out and we can use our time more efficiently. We will start our 30 minutes in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, first thing I want to do is actually delete this group, and I'm going to delete these adjustment layers as well because the lighting looks pretty bad on those mountains. Now, I'm going to add some depth to this image. I'll take this mountain, and I'm going to drag this mountain right over here. I'm going to warp it up. Next thing we're going to do, I'm going to take another mountain. I'm going to duplicate it again, and I'm going to add it deeper in the foreground back here, or background rather. Here we go, we have our mountain set up. Now let's work on the sky a little bit more. It looks really bland. We're going to keep these glows right here, but I want to make the top darker. So I'm just going to paint in these shadows on to the top of our sky just to give it more of a contrast. And then we can come back to these mountains, and I'm going to redo this mountain lighting, and I'm going to add a solid color on top and just make it orange, the same color, sort of yellowish orange. Let's lower the opacity so it really looks like it's in the foreground back there. Now for the lighting on our mountain. I'm going to grab a mountain and I'm going to hit it with a hue and saturation and then a curves. I can paint these curves on manually. So I'm just painting shadows onto these mountains. It's going to be very repetitive, so I have a lot of cuts in here. I want these mountains to be pretty dark. I want there to be a big contrast between highlights and shadows in this piece. Now it's time to add some highlights onto our mountains. I really want to be able to add highlights onto our player, so I'm not going to try to spend too much time on this. And there we go, our first mountain is complete. Now I'm just going to take these same adjustments and bring them over and put them on top of every other mountain and basically just repeat this process. More shadows, more highlights, even more shadows, and even more highlights. And that should do it for all of our mountains. We have about 17 minutes left. Honestly, not sure how I'm feeling. I think it's coming along. The player highlights is going to be the hardest part, so we'll see how that turns out. Next, we're going to go ahead and clean up this swirl we have going on here. I'm actually going to add a few more smoke parts. I want it to wrap around like it's going around this log here. We can warp it right here like we're coming into the foreground. There we go for our last smoke right here. What we're going to do is we're going to put all these in a group. We're going to duplicate it, and I'm going to put it on linear dodge add. I'm going to paint subtle highlights to the smoke just like that. And lastly, I think we're ready to do our lighting onto this stump. I wanted to wait until after we got the purple down so we knew exactly where the light was going to come from. We can add these shadows way down here just to blend it in with the bottom of our picture. Adding highlights onto this stump, I'm just going to add some blend diff, and we can sort of add some glows just onto this surface of the stump. There we go, that should do it. I might come back if I have more time, but for now, we're going to stay on our player right here. We're going to drop some levels, So we're just going to have to very meticulously paint on these shadows and make sure they line up with where this light source is coming from. It's a bit more difficult because the light source is sort of weird. You don't really have a light source that's swirling around. There we go. That's as far as we're going to get right now with our shadows. We're going to add a brightness, and we're just going to make parts of him brighter just so he's not so dark. All around these highlights we're going to make a little bit brighter. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, and we're going to add some color onto our highlights right now. I also think I want to add a camera raw, so we're going to have to speed up this part a bit. Coming in on the 8-minute mark, I think these highlights are coming along a little bit. I wish I had more time, obviously, but I think they're going to turn out okay. And the next most important thing I want to do with about 7 minutes left is I'm going to add some fog in these mountains. The low flow brush, make some fog. And I want to paint it a lot in the foreground right here. I'm going to add some final color correction, so I'm just going to click solid color, bring it down to about a purple. If we click soft light and then we scroll through these colors, we should get a nice effect. If we go about right here. Alright, I think we're going to go ahead and add our camera raw. We have about 4 minutes left, which we should have a little bit of time left over, I think, actually. Let's make it a bit brighter to up in our highlights. Let's change the saturation of the orange just a little bit. On color grading, let's make our shadows a bluish purple. Let's make our highlights this orange color. For the midtones, we'll pick a purple, and boom. This is our final product. For 30 minutes, I think this is not bad at all. I'm super excited to see what I can get done in 10 hours. Here's what our 30 minutes looks like compared to our 5 minutes. Obviously a huge difference. But without further ado, let's get into the 10-hour design. Starting off, I wanted to recut everything out so it could be a lot cleaner, and I have so much time I might as well. I'm putting these elements in the foreground, so I have this stick here and this stump, and it's going to add a lot of depth to this piece. Again, just adding in these mountains, but I think redoing it allowed me to get a way better shape with the mountains. Now adding the sky, I wanted to warp it to match the shape of the mountain, so we gave it that little twirl effect and added a few on top of each other so we could blend them. Giving these clouds some highlights from the sky glow. And then I wanted to give the gray areas some blue tint just to add some character. Next up, the tedious process of blending these mountains. Again, just shadows and highlights and shadows and highlights, but this time we got to take our time and really took a long time to make them look as good as we could. And we're blending in our last mountain here, just adding those shadows and highlights. Next we're blending in the stump, making it darker on the bottom and giving him some feet shadows. Now I decided to add these little TVs I got from Envato Elements. I thought it would be a nice source of glow. I think it really makes it have a unique style with the old vintage TVs. Here I'm adding old pictures of De'Aaron Fox in college or memorable plays he's made inside of the TVs. And it'll also leave a glow on the ground, so I'm adding that as well. Now we're going to be adding our smoke around our player. You can see I have a lot more time to make it more dynamic and fit around our player more snug. Here I want to add a trail in the back of this smoke to make it seem like it's coming from somewhere and leading up to him. And lastly, I decided to add this TV up here with a picture of him from Duke on it. And now we're going with our player treatment. We're going to add all these bright areas around where the smoke would be hitting him, or those highlights would be hitting him. And darkening up all the areas where they won't get much light. Here we're adding some color to our highlights. We just put a solid color on and use blend if, and we can sort of add these hues that are coming from our light sources. Now this is where I'm bringing in extra assets, the TVs and these rocks. These rocks I think will add some motion to the graphic and also just a new dynamic that'll sort of bring your attention upwards towards De'Aaron Fox. And this is our final product of 10 hours. Overall, I am satisfied with the amount of detail we were able to squeeze in there and how dynamic everything looks with the glows and the rocks. And here's what all the graphics look like compared to each other. If you don't know already, you can find this file on my Patreon as well as 70 plus of my other favorite files for just $5 a month. So much. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have a few good videos coming out in the near future. Stick around for that, and I'll see you guys. Peace.